You're listening to Blood and Breakfast, the most important meal of the day. All characters and events depicted in this work are entirely fictitious. On a chilly November evening, a small-town sheriff named Jack Carter was startled by a frantic knock on his door. It was Mrs. Thompson, a resident of the quiet town of Clearwater. Her face was as white as a sheet, her hands trembling uncontrollably.
"John, my husband, he's dead!"
Sheriff Carter was immediately at alert. He pulled on his coat and followed Mrs. Thompson to her home. There, lying in a pool of blood, was Mr. Thompson, a well-known businessman, lifeless with a knife protruding from his chest. The crime scene was ghastly. The room was a mess, the furniture upturned, the couple's photo shattered on the floor. It was clear a struggle had taken place. Sheriff Carter started his investigation. The town hadn't seen a murder in decades. As he asked around, he discovered the Thompsons' housekeeper, a certain Miss Emily, had abruptly quit just a day before. That was a lead worth following. Emily was a quiet woman, barely in her 20s. She lived alone on the outskirts of town. When questioned, she admitted to an argument with Mr. Thompson over unpaid wages.
"But I would never kill him, Sheriff,"
she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. As the investigation continued, a more complicated picture of Mr. Thompson began to emerge. Many in the town had held grudges against the man for his ruthless business practices. Some had even voiced their wish for him to be gone. Among these voices was Mr. Thompson's own brother, Richard, who recently lost his store due to a deal gone wrong with John. Could it be family grudges had escalated to murder? Meanwhile, Mrs. Thompson was acting suspiciously. Her grief seemed forced, and she seemed unusually eager to wrap up the investigation. Then came a startling revelation. She was having an affair with a local mechanic, Sam. Sam had no alibi for the time of the murder. He was known to have a violent temper, and his fingers were stained with what looked suspiciously like blood. But it was just engine oil, or so he claimed. The list of suspects was growing, but there was still no clear motive. However, an old diary found hidden in Mr. Thompson's office hinted at a secret that could tie everything together. It detailed Mr. Thompson's shady past as a con artist who had betrayed many, including his own brother, to amass his wealth. The day of the murder, it turns out, was the anniversary of one of his biggest cons. The victim of that long-ago scam had sworn revenge, and it was all documented in the diary. That victim was none other than Sam, the mechanic. The final pieces fell into place when Sheriff Carter found a knife set in Sam's garage, one knife missing. The knife matched the one found in Mr. Thompson's chest. Faced with the evidence, Sam confessed to the murder, driven by years of simmering rage and resentment. In the quiet town of Clearwater, the shock of the murder and the revelation of the killer's identity sent ripples through the community. The shadow of past deeds had finally caught up, and in its wake, it left a chilling lesson. That the seeds of crime sown in the past can bloom into a terrifying reality.